They say dignity is quiet until challenged. Then it speaks in thunder. For Anthony Miles, that moment arrived not through violence or loudness, but with a request as simple as water. And the reaction he received, soaked not in policy, but in prejudice, turned a quiet moment into a watershed one that would topple more than just egos. Flight 681 was boarding on a crisp Tuesday morning. Anthony entered the first-class cabin with the ease of someone used to being where he belonged. Not because of arrogance, but because of earned presence. He wore a muted charcoal suit, his carry-on slung neatly over one shoulder, and his gait steady, controlled. Rotuahi's seat was nestled beside the window, flanked by polished mahogany trim and plush leather. He placed his briefcase carefully under the seat in front of him and exhaled, soaking in the momentary pause. After weeks of back-to-back consulting sessions and late-night policy briefings, he'd chosen this flight deliberately short, direct, and quiet. As boarding continued, Anthony pressed the service button. Once. Just once. He didn't rush it. He simply preferred water, not the champagne already making rounds in flutes. Nearby, a couple had already requested their third glass before takeoff. The flight attendant, all smiles, entertained them with warmth and charm. 10 minutes passed. No water. He pressed the button again. Rachel Danning, lead flight attendant with pristine posture and a well-practiced smile, looked up from her terminal. She saw the service light above his seat blink. Her expression didn't change. She leaned toward a colleague and murmured something before making her way to Anthony's row. She stopped, arms crossed. Her tone was clipped, a blend of professionalism and caution. Service will continue shortly, sir. Passengers are expected to be patient. Anthony met her gaze. Understand. I've only pressed it twice. It's been 15 minutes. Rachel offered a sharp nod. We appreciate cooperation, she said before walking away. The man next to Anthony chuckled softly into his wine glass. Thinks he's at a Waffle House, he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for others to hear. Rachel heard it. She didn't correct him. Anthony said nothing. He folded his hands, his breathing steady. The disparity grew louder with each ignored glance. Rachel passed again and again, serving wine, removing jackets, asking if the temperature was comfortable all for everyone but him. When he finally asked again calm, respectful Rachel leaned in just enough to make it performative. You've already made your request. Additional interruptions aren't helpful, she said, her voice low but firm. The white man beside him smirked into his glass. Rachel didn't offer him water. She just walked away. Passengers began to notice. A woman across the aisle, her eyes narrowing in quiet observation, finally spoke. He's just waiting on water, she said calmly. He's been polite the entire time. Rachel's smile thinned. Thank you. We're following standard service. Soon after, Rachel returned not with water, but with instruction. There's been a seating adjustment, she said to the woman who had defended Anthony. You'll be more comfortable in Economy Plus. The woman's eyes hardened. She rose without a word. Rachel's message was clear. Speak up, and you'll be punished. Anthony watched. Still, he did not speak. But something in his demeanor shifted. He didn't look out the window anymore. He watched her instead. She returned to the galley and logged into the crew tablet. A new entry appeared. Passenger. A. Miles. Notes. Prior behavior concerns. Monitor. Avoid escalation. Jake Ortiz, a junior attendant with 2 years of experience, saw the alert on his screen in the rear galley. It didn't match what he had seen. There had been no behavior. No raised voice. No incident. Jake asked quietly. Anything going on up front? No, his colleague replied. Pretty normal. But that log entry a language used Jake knew what it meant. It was vague on purpose. It didn't need truth. It only needed implication. Jake approached Rachel. That log, was that accurate? He asked. Rachel's reply was quiet and sharp. He doesn't have to do anything to be a problem. Jake paused. So no complaint? No flag from corporate? Her eyes narrowed. You questioning my judgment? She asked. Maybe you'd prefer reassignment. Jake said nothing and stepped away. From that moment, everything changed. Anthony's name now carried weight, a quiet warning embedded in the system. Rachel moved with heightened poise. Polished, efficient. But with Anthony, her path diverted. She served every other passenger with care. He received nothing. At row 3C, a man working on his laptop looked up and asked Rachel about the passenger ahead. "Some people require more management," she replied, vague and loaded. Anthony remained still. Rachel returned with a clipboard. "We've had a reallocation. You'll need to move to row 30, she said. "Is there a reason?" Anthony asked, calm. "It's an operational necessity. If you don't comply, I'll request intervention." The rows quieted. Anthony stood, collected his bag, and walked the length of the plane toward the back. Grace Chun, an attendant stationed in economy, met him with uncertainty in her eyes. She had read the log, but had seen nothing herself. Still, she showed him to his seat. Up front, a new passenger took 2A. White, loud, late. Rachel greeted him with warmth. Jake and Grace exchanged glances. Both had questions. Neither spoke them aloud. Anthony opened his notebook. He began writing. Names, times, behavior. Not emotionally, strategically. Later, a teenage boy in a denim jacket discreetly began recording. He had seen the switch, the tone, the difference. Rachel noticed and demanded the phone. "Recording during flight is a violation," she claimed. The boy's mother asked what the problem was. Rachel smiled and deleted the video. Anthony watched. A few seats back, a young girl whispered to her father, "Why did they move that man?" He didn't answer. In the galley, Rachel updated the log again. Passenger relocated. Noise cancellation. Electronics issue resolved. Grace read the entry. It was wrong. She added her own note. Passenger cooperative. No incidents observed. Rachel flagged it. Back in the cockpit, the captain received an alert. A priority override. Issued by Horizon Global Aviation, the airline's parent company. The message: do not engage passenger Anthony Miles further. Await executive response. The captain summoned Rachel. He handed her the directive. Her face turned to stone. Anthony Miles was not a regular traveler. He was a contracted federal oversight officer conducting a bias compliance audit. She had failed the test. She was removed from service immediately. Grace and Jake resumed duties. Anthony sat quietly in the back, his presence now unshakable. Rachel retreated to the front galley. Jake looked toward her, didn't smile. Grace returned to her cart and passed Anthony. This time, she placed a bottle of water on his tray. No words, just acknowledgement. As the plane landed, passengers were rerouted through a private jetway. On the ground, executives from the airline and its legal team waited. That evening, a press release announced that the airline's multi-billion-dollar defense contract with Helios Technologies had been terminated. Not because of turbulence, because of culture. Anthony Miles didn't seek revenge. He sought correction. The video the boy recorded had been saved to the cloud. When it surfaced, it lit up every news outlet. Within 48 hours, SkyAero stock dropped by 17%. Partnerships were canceled. Executives were removed. The CEO resigned. The story complete with screenshots, headlines, and silence went viral. But the story's conclusion wasn't scandal. It was transformation. Rachel Moore was suspended, later terminated. Months passed. She found herself volunteering a nonprofit for racial justice. She learned terms she had never known: implicit bias, coded power, systemic dismissal. Eventually, she asked to meet Anthony. In a private room in D.C., she said only, "I was wrong." Anthony replied, "I didn't need you to say it for me. I needed you to say it for yourself." He shook her hand. They later spoke together at a panel, not as enemies, but as evidence. Anthony's final words at that event echoed beyond the walls of the hall. Justice isn't punishment. Justice is transformation. He never returned to first class, not because he couldn't, but because he chose to sit where stories still needed witnessing. Rachel never returned to flight. She remained on the ground, helping others see the signals she once missed. Flight 681 became more than a story about one man and a glass of water. It became a landmark in quiet resistance, visible truth, and the long, steady flight toward equity. The end.